It's always a challenge to set boundaries when faced with positions conflicting with your own values. What to tolerate, what to condemn, what to condone, what to support, and what to walk away from. We make these decisions all the time. As grandparents, deciding whether to be mute or speak up when our children become parents and don't do things the way we did. When to speak, when not to. Or when listening to a friend bemoan their limited resources and the poverty they face, and then drive them to the airport as they go off on vacation. How about the people in the next apartment screaming and yelling and things seem to be breaking? You call the police, knock on their door, or accept the fact that that's just the way they communicate. And when the in-laws arrive, it only gets worse. And what do you do when the person next to you at the LCBO picks up bottles, puts them in their bag, and then walks out without paying? Is it any of my business? Do I tell the staff? Do I talk to the thief? Don't say it doesn't concern me, because it does. Others seeing that are tempted to follow in the footsteps of those who steal, and they may ruin their lives if they do. And theft adds to the cost of the products in every store, wherever it happens. Have you ever been at a funeral that left you confused? People wailing and throwing themselves at the casket or onto the ground? And your WASP background dictating that a discreet tear in a hanky is as emotional as good taste permits. What do you do when someone is swearing up a storm and children are within ear's reach? Or an older person who is terribly offended? For myself, when they swear with sex words, I feel sorry for their limited vocabulary of adjectives. But if they're taking the Lord's name in vain, I find it difficult to remain silent. But is it any of my business to speak up just because my ears are offended? But when we tolerate wrong, do we not become a contributor? A week ago, the Premier of Ontario attempted to stop an Al-Quds gathering of hate. They support terrorists, and their goal is to drive the Jews out of Israel. Bearing incredibly hateful anti-Semitic signs, they protested before the American consulate, a building that terrorists had shot up just days before. Examples of the messages bore stereotypes of hook-nosed Jews. One reading, "We will knock on the gates of heaven with skulls of the Zionists." Another, bearing a Jewish Star of David flag, had rats crawling out of the center of the star. The Israeli flags with the word "eliminated." All this in Toronto, a city that claims all are welcomed here. Premier Ford failed. The haters succeeded. The protest went ahead. The court ruled that that was their right. The toleration of the intolerant and dangerous, rubber stamped by the judge. What does that say about us as a nation, as a people? Have we abandoned principles to ensure that when we welcome people to this land, as they flee from tyrannies, that we welcome the battle lines of the old lands as well? Has our respect for the multiculturalism of the newcomers resulted in the abandonment of respect of multiculturalism by our combined culture? If we've forsaken the virtues and values of the past, what have we replaced them with? And how are such determinations made? Clearly, age isn't the determinant, the young being too young to be heard and the old too old to be valued. What is clear is that hatred of other people and other values has become an acceptable public stance that I thought had been eliminated when the sign stating "Irish need not apply" had gone the way of the dodo bird. Have certain vocal groups devised a way to address issues in the public that intimidate any with opposing messages? Is there some in-group that gets together online and decides who to support and who to attack this weekend? I don't have all the answers. There are practices with which I'm comfortable that seem odd to others, like walking around with ashes on my forehead one day in the year, traveling solo, or wearing pantyhose. And my basic philosophy is that as long as you're an adult, you make your choices, and as long as no one is hurt by them and you pay your own way, well, work it out with the Lord. But when your choices hurt or threaten others physically or financially, then it ceases being your choice to make. And hurt feelings are not the same as threats. We are not working hard enough at living charitably together. We've torn down the heroes of our past and have attempted to find replacements that haven't caught on. We're not moving in step with the values that most people would like to live by, and yet have not established another set in which the majority of people feel comfortable and safe. We live in very unsettling times. Horrendous wars rage throughout the world. This list from World Population Review goes on and on. Iraq, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Iran, Tanzania, Thailand, Uganda, Algeria, Angola, Morocco, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Benin, Rwanda, Tunisia, Togo, Libya, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, South Sudan, Sudan, Mexico, Afghanistan, Haiti, Colombia, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Myanmar, Yemen, Mozambique, Somalia, Central African Republic, Pakistan. Interesting how we hear a great deal about 2 or 3 of the conflicts and only rare mentions of the other 37. Yet, so many of the world's population live with that stark reality. Drug wars, oil stoppages, inflation, the slaughter of innocents for daring to attempt to depose evil. That list also goes on, and the real consequences are buried, the old and the children and the poor, buried in the rubble of their cities and starved and driven from their homes. We need to get off being upset at things that aren't important. Stop listening to influencers that want their audiences to respond as mindless sheep and start thinking for ourselves. At home, we need to be putting pressure on decision makers to make our streets safer, our homes secure, and courts supporting the law-abiding and all being equal in our courts and in our neighborhoods. Abroad, we need to be reaching into our own pockets and sending money and supplies to the innocent, and letting our voices and words be seen and heard in the halls of power, the media, and in encouragement to those in those distant lands. All positions should be heard and debated, heard in a civilized manner, not in violence and threatening behavior on our streets, schools, and neighborhoods. We need to do more talking with each other, not drowning other voices out just because they don't agree with us. To understand, first, you have to hear. Violence and raised voices are indicators that the argument is weak and must therefore drown out all other voices as their only way to triumph. And so I pray, Lord, please hear me. I know I complain a lot about what should be done and who should be doing it. Help me to work harder at doing things myself. But I ask you, Lord, be with the peacekeepers and the victims, and let justice prevail. Let your love overcome the hate and distrust that is so poisoning your world these days. So may it be. Amen.